That's the entirety of that transmission, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall was there any other communication back from the officer other than the 10-4?
Not at that moment, no, sir, not until he got there.
Okay. So having listened to that, what was your transmission? If you would just reiterate what your transmission was to the officer. And do you stand by your testimony that occurred prior to you having listened to the audio transmission?
Yes, sir.
And have you said anything differently than your testimony than what you heard on the transmission?
Yes.
Have you said anything differently?
Oh, no.
Okay, and you stand by your testimony.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to move that Exhibit Number 4, the recordation of the transmission from Natchitoches Police Department, be entered into the record.
I object. It's switched. It's not it. It's not the right audio. I challenge it. Challenge the transmission.
Okay, based on what?
It possibly got edited.
Why is that?
I have no evidence. I'm objecting, and I'll leave it at the court's discretion.
Well, I guess my question is, what is your objection now? He has presented this call saying, and had this individual who was part of that call saying that's what her call was, that's what she said in the call. What is your objection to the introduction of the item?
The timeliness. It's switched. Let's see. Your Honor, it's all about the timeliness for a reasonable suspicion. I'm attacking the credibility of the timeliness for police, of the police evidence.
Okay. I guess what is it about this particular call or transmission that you are suggesting is invalid?
I'm going to withdraw my objection.
Okay. Then it's entered into the evidence.
Thank you.
Okay.
Your Honor, I have no other questions for Officer Scott.
Officer, you're now going to be cross-examined by Mr. Hines.
Mrs. Scott, Your Honor, I'm going to be asking Mrs. Scott questions about only two things. One, the 9/11 call from the library to the police. Two, the dispatch message that was then communicated to the officer or officers. I would like the clerk to be ready to play.
Objection, Your Honor. This witness has not testified regarding a 911 call. This witness testified regarding a dispatch.
Correct. The call she received.
That's correct, and it was not a 911 call.
Right. And, Mr. Hines, you don't have to preview why you or what you're going to question. You can just ask the witness questions. You don't have to tell me what you're going to do. You can just ask those questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Was that Was that a sustain the objection? Or I would like to...
I guess what he was trying to clarify is that you were stating something that was not in the evidence, so I will sustain that objection.
Okay.
That's officially what he was claiming, is that you were stating something that wasn't accurate and that she did not testify to a 911 call. She testified to a call that was made to dispatch for clarity purposes, so I will sustain the objection.
I would like to offer into evidence the Mrs. Scott. Did you receive a call from the library on January 22nd about 12:30?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and I would like to play this at which it was played before.
Right.
I would like the clerk to be ready to play the audio recording, which Mr. Benjamin's office gave me on a thumb drive, and I provided that thumb drive to the court clerk.
We can play it again. It's in evidence, so we can play it again. Do you want to play it now, or do you want to ask her questions first?
Questions first, Your Honor.
Okay.
And I have transcripts. The transcripts are not in evidence. The recordings are.
Right.
But for the court's convenience, I have transcripts, and everybody can have
I'm not going to accept a transcript again, as we discussed earlier.
Okay.
A transcript is a third party creating evidence. You have the best evidence, which is the actual recording, and that is what actually happened rather than someone else's possible interpretation, whether it's willingly or unwillingly. It might be different. So I think what's sufficient is the actual recording. We're all present and have ears and can hear it, as well as the testimony of the witness, so I'm going to deny that offer of a transcript.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Go forward and ask questions.
I am Travis Hines, and I am representing the defendant today, who is me. On January 22nd, 2022, at approximately 12:30, you dispatched officers after receiving a police dispatch call from the library. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you questions about that call you received from the library on January 22nd. Do you remember that call?
Yes.
You were trained to send officers to the locations of calls, giving them information provided by the caller. That's your job, right?
Yes.
You were trained to provide the dispatch officer with information that was accurate.
Yes.
You are trained to be truthful in the information that you provide to officers, correct?
Correct.
You are trained to provide officers with information that would ensure the safety of the public, the officers, and the caller, and even the suspect, if there is one.
Correct.
And you are trained that failing to provide accurate information could be to injury to the officers, to the caller, or to even the suspect.
Correct.
And you learn that failing to provide accurate information could lead to injury or injustice for an accused person. Isn't that right?
Correct.
It sounds like you know that a lot of people are relying on you to provide the officers with information that is accurate, complete, and of course truthful. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Let's get to the specifics of the call from the library on January 22nd. Did you broadcast the call from the library to the officers as it was happening?
No.
What?
You said, as it was happening.
Is that a yes or a no? Did you broadcast the call from the library to the officers as it was happening? No, right? Did you play the recorded 9/11 call over the radio to the officers on January 22nd?
No.
When is the most recent time you listened to the recording of that call, if at all?
Today.
Can we play the recording?
The one we just did?
Yeah, the one we just did. Yes, Ms. Scott. This is the call you're talking about, correct? The actual call from the library to her?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, is she calling to help you?
Oh, yes. This is Rosalind. I'm calling from the Natchitoches Library. Could you have an officer come by here? There is a patron here that's acting very strange.
I'm sorry. Can you hold just a moment for me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that, ma'am. You said there's somebody suspicious in the library?
Yes. He's acting really strange. He has some backpacks with him, and he's looking around the place. I asked him if I could help him. He asked me what did I want to help him with. Then he tried to go up to the third floor, which is locked, and he's checking all the doors and everything. I don't know.
Can you give me a description of him?
White male, I guess about 6 feet tall. He has, it looks like he had like a little beard.
What is he wearing now?
Oh, I walked outside to call you because I didn't want him to know I was calling.
Okay.
I'm not, I think he had a green army jacket on. I think he did.
Okay, I'll get someone en route.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the one?
Mrs. Scott, the caller described a person acting strange as a white male, correct?
Yes.
Did the caller say anything about the clothing worn by the white male?
Yes.
Yes? Did the caller say that the white male was wearing a green army jacket?
Correct.
Did the caller express uncertainty in describing the clothing worn by the white male?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that. I don't know where he's going with this, but to prejudicial, it seems to me, to keep bringing up the race of the person who we've already established and has given a description of. That's irrelevant at this time, just not relevant to the actions of the person who is clearly identified both by the testimony and by the defendant himself.
Your response.
Race is a description. I mean, I don't see it as a racist thing.
No, I think there hasn't been any dispute that what they're saying is the individual that she called about was the individual that was in the library causing disturbance. That is the individual that's was in the library causing disturbance. That is the individual that's sitting in the defense seat today. I don't think there's a dispute so far anywhere that that's actually the individual that was called about that Mrs. Parker mentioned seeing. That Mr. Jimenez mentioned seeing and that you admitted to being. So I don't think that there has been any dispute as far as that connection, so I don't know where you're going with this, but I'm going to overrule your objection. But see where this is going with just to see. But I'll give just a couple more questions to get to the point. I don't know exactly what you're challenging right now, but go ahead.
Okay. Did the caller express uncertainty in describing the clothing worn by the male?
No.
You dispatched the officers to go to the library without relaying the caller's uncertainty about the male's clothing, correct?
I'm going to object to that. There was no testimony from this dispatch communications officer about any uncertainty.
Right. She just testified no.
It was just a regurgitation of what?
Well, she just answered the question no when you said was there any uncertainty, so I'll sustain your objection. She just said there was no uncertainty in her description.
In your dispatch, you included the phrase, quote, like he's casing the library, unquote, correct? Yes or no?
Correct.
The phrase, casing the library, is your phrase, not something the caller said, correct?
Correct.
You used the word
suspicious
twice in your dispatch message, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
The caller never said the word suspicious, correct?
Correct.
My last questions. Did the caller express that the male was checking the doors? Listen closely. With the purpose of seeing which ones were locked? Yes or no?
Correct.
Your Honor, I would like to play again the recording of the police dispatch call, then ask the question again.
Judge, I would.
I think she has answered the question. Unless there is something that you think she's disputing what she said, I think we've heard the police call. I'm going to overrule your request to play it again. I don't think she's challenged it at all. I think she has agreed with what you said was in the tape in the recording.
Mrs. Scott, did you dispatch the message that the male was checking the doors? Listen closely. To see which ones are locked and which ones are not? Yes or no? I can ask again. Did you dispatch the message that the male was checking the doors to see which ones are locked and which ones are not?
No.
I would like to replay the 911, the police dispatch call.
For what purpose?
To refresh her memory.
She answered your question. I don't know what you want her to say. She answered your question. She didn't say she didn't remember. She said, I remember.
Okay. I want to make sure I got your testimony all right before we're finished. You testified that you did not relay the caller's uncertainty about a green army jacket, correct?
Correct.
You testified that you and not the caller used the words casing the library, correct?
Correct.
All right, you testified that you and not the caller used the word suspicious in describing the white male, right?
Correct.
You testified that you and not the caller described that the male's purpose in checking the doors was to see which ones are locked and which ones are not. Is that correct?
Correct.
All of that is true. All four of those are true. That's your testimony, correct? Right?
Correct.
You did not see the person at the library at any time. Is that correct?
Correct.
After dispatching the call, you did not provide any more information about the male to any officer, correct?
At that time, no.
So everything you said about his behavior was based upon changing the words the caller used to words police would typically use then, correct?
I'm going to object to the characterization or to the incorrect characterization of her testimony. She's the best person to testify as to what she said, and he is trying to testify on her behalf by characterizing her testimony.
I would agree. If you have a question about her statement, you can make them. There has been no foundation about what is the usual words the police do or do not use. So I would say limit your questions to what she has said or what she has not said or what may be in her statement, so sustained.
You testified that you know your words are important. But in this case, the words you chose were not an accurate description of what the caller told you about the suspect. Would that be an accurate statement?
Objection, Your Honor. He's still trying to inroad around for characterization of her testimony. She can testify what she testifies to.
Correct. I'm going to sustain it. I mean, the question is whether or not I think you covered it when you said her 4 things that you feel she did not say and the caller did not say. But again, I'm going to sustain that objection to that form of the question.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. No more questions, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Benjamin, any redirect?
Officer Scott, is it your opinion you did what you were supposed to do and trained to do when receiving this call?
Yes.
Did you relay the information as you received it?
Yes.
When you receive a call characterizing activity that appears to be out of the ordinary that a caller calls with the things that you heard, the way she articulated the call of someone checking exits, going to places they shouldn't be going, as a police dispatcher, how do you characterize that to dispatch?
As suspicious.
And that's what you did, correct?
Correct.
That's your job, isn't it?
Correct.
And you gave the information that you received, is that correct?
Correct.
No further questions.
Any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right. You may leave your seat. Now, is this witness excused, or is she on recall?
She is, Your Honor.
I want to subject her to recall.
Okay. Ma'am, you'll need to stay then. Back in the back room, but not in the courtroom.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, your next witness, sir.
Your Honor, the city would call Officer Davis.
All right. Officer Davis.